So here's the good news. Caught you by surprise, huh? You didn't think there was any good news. Yeah, we got to have some good news. And we'll know that when the good news makes it into the news, then we will know that Mashiach is here. So here's the good news. The month that we're entering now, 30 days of preparation for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, were traditionally very somber days. The Elul mood, the day of judgment is approaching. We've got 30 days to get our act together. You got to clean up your slate, take stock of how the year went, what was good about it, what was bad, what needs to be fixed, what needs to be forgiven. So we enter into a very somber, very serious month where people are a little more careful with their mitzvahs. Even the most observant Jew finds a way of enhancing their mitzvah, doing something special beyond the letter of the law. It's Judgment Day is coming. That's the traditional approach. Chabad, Hasidus, as with every other subject, finds the good news, the sweeter side of things. So first of all, what do we mean by Judgment Day? Seems like the assumption is judgment means you're going to get punished. Not a good assumption. Negative thinking. Judgment means we will be judged. Why assume that we're going to be found guilty and punishable? If you can assume that, then there's no judgment. You're already guilty before you even go to court. On the contrary, Judgment Day means we're going to finally get our reward for all the good things that we did. Why not make that assumption? The truth is that when you look at Rosh Hashanah, at its very essence, the very simple definition, what does Rosh Hashanah mean? The head of the year. Where's the judgment? Who's being judged? Also, it is the anniversary of creation. Actually, it's the sixth day of creation. The day of Rosh Hashanah, the first day of the month of Tishrei, is the sixth day of creation. Of course, creation started on the 25th of this month, of Elul. So, what does that have to do with judgment? It's an anniversary. By the way, a universal anniversary. The whole world was created. It's not the day that Judaism was created. The universe. And everything and anyone in it. So it's an anniversary. It's the head of the year. Where's the judgment? So we've spoken about this before. This beautiful analogy or example of a man who finds the woman of his dreams, and they're going to get married, and he hires the greatest and most famous chef to cater the meal, the greatest musicians to perform at the wedding, the most beautiful location for the event, a great venue, and he hires an incredible architect to build them a beautiful home. And now he's very proud of the chef and the location and the musicians and the architect. And he tells everybody how great it's going to be. But imagine if a week before the wedding, the woman changes her mind. She doesn't want to marry him. Is he still going to run around boasting about the chef and the venue and the musicians and the architects? Not at all. Now they're a nuisance. He's got to find ways of paying them off, come to a settlement. He's got to fire them. He's got to get rid of them. Because all of that was only for the sake of the marriage. The same is true with Rosh Hashanah. It's the anniversary of creation. So the oceans, the forests, the mountains, the planets, God is very proud of them. He loves his creation. But it was all created as a venue, as a setting, as a backdrop for our relationship with him. So if we coronate him as our king for the coming year, then it's all a go. Then the oceans are good, the forests are good, the mountains and the planets and the atoms and the molecules, they're all wonderful because it's all going to be the setting for the wedding or for the marriage. So our response to the relationship will determine whether creation is justified or not. So what is the judgment? The judgment is all of the creation or all of these parts of the universe still necessary, still interesting, still beautiful? Is God still proud of them? If we say yes, then the world is justified again for another year. If we don't say yes, they're all in trouble. So it seems that the judgment day is not judgment on us, it's judgment on the rest of creation. So here's what it really boils down to. When God created the world, nobody asked him to. There was no demand. There was no need on the part of creation. Creation didn't beg to be created. God created everything on his own initiative, which is what we mean when we say the world was created out of nothing. It's not just that God didn't have sand to begin with. He didn't have clay. There was nothing, meaning there was no reason. The earth didn't need to exist. The universe didn't need to be created. There was no demand for it other than in God himself. Some internal, essential, organic desire for a relationship. The venue for that relationship, let there be light, let there be a heaven, let there be grass, let all of it, so that we can get to Adam and Eve and start a relationship. So, God became our king on his own initiative. That was the first time. But from then on, God asks, let me know if you want me as king for another year, coronate me if you want. Because a king in Jewish thinking and Torah thinking, a king is not a dictator. Umalchusei berotzein kiblu alehem. We asked God to be our king, as is described in the Torah. So, Rosh Hashanah means this is the day of the coronation. Is God going to be our king for another year or not? That's the Kabbalistic explanation. The attribute of royalty, one of the divine attributes, needs to be refreshed every year. How is it refreshed? Not by God's initiative, by our initiative. We have to coronate him. So God is willing to be our king, and we want him to be our king. Well, that's a good shidduch. It's a good match. What hangs in the balance is the justification for the universe. Is the universe still necessary? Is it still interesting? Is it still pleasurable? So Hasidus comes along and adds a little ingredient to what the Kabbalah says. Kabbalah says we have to renew God's royalty. He becomes our king 1 year at a time. So every new year, we have to coronate him anew. Hasidus says, he is our king. That's permanent. That's not going to change. The question is his kingship pleasurable to him, or is it burdensome? A king has to maintain his kingdom. It's a lot of work. Got to keep everything moving. What is it called? The structure, he's got to keep everything moving. He's got to keep the water flowing, the electricity on, the bridges strong and healthy. Does he enjoy it? That's what we can influence. If we coronate him enthusiastically, joyfully, with pleasure, then he will be our king with pleasure. He will enjoy being our king. And here's the really exciting part. Every year, when God agrees to be our king and we coronate him again, it's on a higher level than the year before. So this is 5,781 years. That means 5,781 degrees of pleasure. Because every year when we blow the shofar, coronating him as king, he gets new pleasure, additional pleasure in being our king. A king who loves being a king does more for his kingdom than the king who doesn't love it. But one really important caveat, which the Rebbe emphasizes every year. The first time God created the world, it was on his own initiative. Since then, he wants us to initiate. How do we do that? Oh, we come to the synagogue on Rosh Hashanah, we blow shofar. It's a holiday, a holy day. We refrain from work. We dress in our best. We eat different foods. Everything's different on Rosh Hashanah. But here's the problem. It's like when you coronate a king, everybody comes to the royal gardens or to the palace, and there they present the king with their petition, asking him to be their king. Who comes? The people who are close to the king, people who are involved in the affairs of the state. The average person doesn't show up. He doesn't feel like he belongs at the coronation. So in the month of Elul, in preparation for Rosh Hashanah, the king makes himself more available than the rest of the year. He comes out to the fields where people are working, not with his royal robes, not with his crown, because they don't leave the palace. But he shows up personally to greet the people. And what is his purpose? His purpose is to encourage them, to invite them, to let them know that they are welcome in the palace, as they are. So the king is not wearing any royal garments. The people are not wearing their Shabbos best finery. They're in their work clothes. And they're busy with their work, field work. And it never occurs to them that they dare show up at the palace unprepared, unworthy, inadequate. So the king comes to let them know that they are indeed invited. Now, what does it mean God makes himself more available? In this month, people find themselves naturally thinking about God more than during the rest of the year. Or things that happen, incidents, they see some divine plan. It inspires them. The same event would not inspire them a month ago. But during this month, everything that happens seems to be more godly, more inspiring, more easily inspired. It's like that old song. I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. That was for Alan. So in the month of Elul, somehow the atmosphere is clear and you can see clearly now, more than the rest of the year. Because God is closer. But here's the beautiful part of it. The Rebbe always emphasized and reminded us, why does the king come to inspire the people? Why does he come to invite them to the palace? Because although on the surface, the people in the field have no thoughts of palace, of king, of coronation, it's above them, it's beyond them, it's out of their reach. They have no such ambition. But deep in their hearts, they wish they could be there. They adore their king. They're in awe of their king. But they dare not assume that they would be allowed into the palace. It's like people say, I would love to be a little more traditional and do more mitzvahs, but for that you really have to believe, and I don't. So most people will focus on, oh, you don't. Don't believe. God says, no, wait a minute. Did you say you would love to? That moves God to tears. Knowing that in our heart of hearts, we really want to be there, that inspires God. We are initiating the relationship without even knowing it. In response to that desire that only God can detect, God says, I hear you, and you're wrong. You are invited. You do belong. If that's where your heart is, then that's where you should be. So not only may you come to the palace, I'm inviting you. I came out to make sure that you know that you're invited. In fact, there's a seat at the table with your name on it. If you don't show up, that seat's going to be empty. It's not going to look good. You got to show up. There's a place card with your name on it. That's the month of Elul. That's the judgment. The judgment is, since you want to be there, then the royal opinion, which is the judgment, says if you want to be there, then you've got to be there. Then I need you there. That's a very different flavor to the preparation, the month of preparation for Rosh Hashanah. So we should prepare, use every day of this month to appreciate the invitation, to appreciate God's sensitivity to our inner heart, our inner truth. As the Baal Shem Tov said, where a person wants to be is where he really finds himself. Your desire tells you where you really are. Physically, you could be someplace else. But in the world of truth, you are where your heart is. So the birth of the Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe, Hasidus, is related to the month of Elul, the 18th day of Elul. 18, of course, is Chai, life. So the 18th of this month means the life of this month. Who breathed life into these 30 days? Who brought these 30 days alive and exciting? The Baal Shem Tov and the Alter Rebbe. Hasidus. Until then, these 30 days were days of dread. A little too serious. Now they're days of anticipation. Our relationship is about to improve. Another degree of pleasure, which kind of reminiscent of the ladder that stands on earth and reaches into heaven, Jacob's dream. This ladder now has 5,781 rungs. And these are degrees of pleasure, because earth has its pleasure, heaven has its pleasure. A ladder that stands on earth, rooted in physical pleasure, but reaching into heaven, meaning we can rise on that ladder until we approach godly pleasure. And every rung is an increase. Every rung is another year, or every year is another rung. So we continue to climb. But it's interesting that the description in the Torah of that ladder is not a ladder that Jacob sees himself climbing. What does he see on the ladder? Angels coming down and going up and coming down. Godliness is moving, getting closer. Yesterday's godliness goes up, a new godliness comes down for the new year. What is a new godliness? God's pleasure in being our king. So, of course, in anticipation of that, we have 30 months of preparation. But what are we preparing for? A trial? We're going to be put on trial? No. And if we are, that's fine too, because we can expect to have it go in our favor. But really, what this anniversary is all about is a relationship, not a trial. And the relationship is very romantic. Everybody in the world would say, these people in the field, they don't belong in a palace. They don't want to be in a palace. They're not interested in the palace. They're trying to make a couple of dollars. They want to grow some crops. They want some money. They're not into this godly stuff. Because that's what it looks like on the surface. In fact, even if you ask them, they would tell you the same thing. I haven't thought about the king. I haven't thought about godliness. It's not my thing. But God is not fooled. He looks to the inner stirrings, to the inner truth. And inside, we want what's true. We want our innocence. We want to be connected to reality, to the reason for creation, to why we're here, to what our life really means and what it's all for. We want that. We were a little discouraged in our younger years. We asked those questions. Nobody knew the answer. So we gave it up. But only on the surface. Inside, it only gets stronger every year. The need, the desire, the hope for some truth, for some clarity, for some innocence and holiness, we need it more than ever. And only someone with a little bit of romance and a little bit of empathy, can see it in us, and God sees it. The compliment, just in that alone, is huge. You know, some people have the attitude that human beings think they're pretty good. You know, we go around giving each other compliments. You're so good. You're so nice. You're wonderful. Oh, this person's a tzaddik. Real amazing, amazing. And at the same time, these people believe that God is always critical. We're never good enough for him. He's just looking for someone to smite. Such a biblical thing to do. The opposite is the truth. As much as we compliment ourselves and each other, we have no idea. God sees the most innocent part of us, the most godly part of us, the truest part of us. He thinks we're great. That's a compliment. He admits that he's a little biased, right? He says, "You're my children. I can't afford to see anything wrong with you. Love is blind. So all I see is the good." That's okay, we'll take it. And then we can't get over God's goodness. You're coming out to invite me personally? Couldn't send me a text? An email? You had to come out yourself personally. You had to leave the palace and come to these unfamiliar surroundings and watch us do our menial tasks, consumed by our material pursuits. And you have to come and tell us that we are better than we think and that we do belong in the palace, that we are worthy and that we are welcome and that we will be missed. What a king. So yes, this relationship is an incredible relationship. And it's about to get better. So we try to be a little nicer. We try to be a little more thoughtful. We try to be a little more precise in fulfilling his will, getting it right. It's an old relationship. It has stood the test of time, has overcome many, many obstacles. There were so many times when he said he's had it with us. It was never real. So many times we say we've had it with him. It's never real. We always bounce back. So let me share with you this amazing little thing, a medrash. We all know the story. Moses goes up the mountain, into heaven, into the clouds, to receive the Torah. God gives him the 2 tablets, created by God and inscribed by God with the 10 commandments. Suddenly God says to Moshe, descend, go down, because your people, they messed up. They created a graven image. Moshe comes down off the mountain. He sees the golden calf, and he throws the tablets, which were made of sapphire or something. He throws them down and they break. Why would he do something like that? Because the written form of the commandments were like the document, the agreement, the contract. Since the Jews had made a golden calf, Moshe felt that he should not deliver the contract because then they would be held liable. So he cancels the contract by breaking, like tearing up the document. He breaks the tablets. And so if God is angry at the people, he can say, I never gave them the tablets. They never got the commandment in writing. So you can forgive them. Beautiful, huh? God actually thanks him for breaking the tablets. But here's the question. God told Moshe while he was still on the mountain that the Jews had created a graven image. Why then does Moshe bring the tablets down the mountain? He should have left them in heaven. The Medrash asks that question. And the answer will surprise you. The Medrash says Moshe carried the tablets down the mountain because he did not believe that the Jews had actually worshipped an idol. Did not believe it. Yeah, but wait a minute. Wait a minute. Who told him that the Jews had created an idol? God himself. And the Medrash doesn't hesitate to say, yeah, but Moshe didn't believe it. Didn't believe it. Didn't believe God. How do you figure? It's an incredible display of love. Moshe could not believe it of his people. No, they would never, can't believe it. That's very nice, but God told you that they did. What do you mean you don't believe it? Someone who believed in God and carried every word of God without any distortion directly from God to the people, all of a sudden he doesn't believe what God is saying? Come on. What does this mean? So really, it doesn't even need analysis. It's so beautiful the way it stands, with its mystery. But if we try to understand it, what does it mean? God tells Moshe that they committed a sin, and Moshe doesn't believe it. But when he comes down off the mountain and he sees it with his own eyes, oh, now he's convinced. So he believes what he sees more than what God says. Not too kosher. So to make a little sense of it, everything God says has many layers of meaning. God says to Moshe, your people are worshiping an idol. Moshe said, you mean sometimes they stop thinking about you? Is that what you mean? You mean sometimes they love their wives or their husbands or their children more than they love you? Is that what you mean? You certainly don't mean an idol. Can't believe that. So Moshe immediately assumed that God is speaking on a very high level, on a very subtle level, something that he needs to go down and educate the people about. When he comes down off the mountain and there's an actual golden calf, complete shock, totally unprepared. So what does it mean he didn't believe God? He didn't believe it in the literal. He assumed that God is talking on a heavenly level. In a heavenly standard, something the Jews are doing is not kosher. But they didn't actually violate the commandment. And this is a lesson to all of us. Even when we hear something negative about others, you don't immediately assume the most graphic, the most tangible, the most physical form of that criticism, even if you know it's true. But you assume it's true on a very subtle level. And on that level, there's no punishment. But you see, the Medrash is not afraid to say, he didn't believe it, without qualification, without answer, explaining. He didn't believe it. That's fine as stated, because that's what a Jewish leader should do. He should always take the side of the people, even against God. As we've spoken many times, God makes people sick. Our mitzvah is to heal them. God makes people suffer. Our mitzvah is to help them. So even when God says to Moshe, the people, they're very bad, Moshe says, by your standards maybe, but not bad, until he saw it with his own eyes. And what is it about seeing with your own eyes? You trust your senses more than you trust God. It's actually a halachic principle. The only way you can punish someone for their sins is if you saw it. You heard about it? Not good enough. An angel told you? No, not good enough. You're a prophet and you saw it in a vision? No way. God told you? That is not halachically admissible in a court of law. In a court of law, you have to have two witnesses. Two witnesses who saw the crime, not who heard about it from God. So it's not that Moshe trusted his senses. Moshe was going according to the law of the Torah. You cannot punish a person without witnesses. And witnesses have to see it with their own eyes. It can't be circumstantial evidence. It can't be hearsay. Or they're not witnesses. At any rate, here's what the month of Elul is all about. It's like some people who, what are they called? They renew their vows, like they reenact their marriage or something. They refresh their marriage. Well, that should happen at every anniversary. You refresh, you upgrade the relationship. And that's what Rosh Hashanah is. And we have 30 days to get ready. king in the field. Do we have some time for questions, conversation?
Yes, we do. I allowed everybody to unmute themselves. So hopefully we'll get one question at a time. The floor is open.
How did you just manage to talk for 50 minutes?
Oh, no, don't tempt me. I can go on and on.
Where
But
does
you
the
can-
time go?
I'll tell you this joke. This guy comes to the psychiatrist and says, you gotta help me. I can't sleep every night. All my wife does is talk and talk and talk in her sleep. Keeps me up all night. What can I do? The psychiatrist says, let her say a few words while you're awake. Let her get a few words in while she's awake so she won't have to talk when she's sleeping. So I don't know, maybe in my childhood I didn't get a chance to talk enough and I'm making up for it now. I don't know.
Well, Baruch Hashem. Thank you.
Was it 50?
Rabbi?
It was really 50 minutes?
I was thinking it's amazing you could stop in just 50 minutes.
Oh,
That's
yeah, you see, that takes a lot of willpower. That's real discipline.
Rabbi Friedman, is there anything specific about this year that we should be focusing on, or in terms of becoming better, or would you say that it's just like any other year, or better yet, what's special about this year that we can start to work on? Five, 7, 8, 1.
It wouldn't be too much of a stretch to say that the preparation for this year's Rosh Hashanah began 4 months ago, 5 months ago. Being in lockdown, that's a great preparation. So we've already started our preparation. But this year it's going to be a much more effective, a much more successful coronation. It really is. We said that only God knows that deep in our hearts we're really thinking of Him and want to get closer to Him. This year it's not so hidden. People you really wouldn't expect are volunteering the information. They found themselves thinking about God. Not something they usually do. So we've got a real head start this year. It's not just 1 month of preparation, it's 5 months of preparation. Almost a half year. So, beginning of this year, we talked about the surprises that are coming. That this is going to be a year of surprises. Wow. It certainly lived up to that reputation. So now what's the coming year? More surprises? Coming year will be goodness on a level that will surprise you.
Why do we hear from previous tzaddikim who were so fearful of the month of Elul? And they say that even the fish in the waters were shivering when Elul came.
Yeah, not even the fish. Only the fish. because their existence was in question. If the Jews don't blow shofar and they don't take God as king, then no more fish, no more water, no
So
more.
then why only the fish?
Right. Yeah. No, there was. You're right. There was a much greater emphasis on reward and punishment and sin and forgiveness. Yes, there was a great emphasis on that. And it was very moral, it was very noble, it was very holy, but it was very painful. The world was full of pain. When the
Still
world,
is. It still is.
not really, no comparison.
Not the same.
No.
We are so lucky to live in America.
And really, in every country, the suffering has eased. There aren't as many people dying from hunger and from diseases. No, the world is much nicer, much more inhabitable.
The Melech Basada concept makes it seem almost like we should be looking forward.
Yes, exactly right.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Rabbi Friedman?
I was saying, when the world is in a suffering stage, in a painful stage, then you have to find the godliness within suffering. When the suffering stops or gets lighter, then you got to find the godliness in pleasure. I spoke to a class, the Talmud Torah. They were studying Job. Of all the books of the Torah, this Minnesota suburban Talmud Torah was studying the book of Job, and they want to know, how do you serve God when you're in a lot of pain and you're suffering? So when I walked in, I said, I don't know. We should be reading a different book. We should be trying to figure out, how can we serve God when you're spoiled rotten? Because that's a real challenge for suburban Minnesota, you know? So we have to find the godliness in the comfort, in the affluence. Back then, they were trying to find the godliness in the pain and in the suffering.
Rabbi Friedman, how do you speak to those who are stuck in their pain?
You know, for every person, there's a different approach. If we can say anything general, it's first, you have to join them in the pain. If you really sympathize, if you really feel their pain, and you agree that their pain is terrible and unbearable and unjustified, and then you've earned the right to say anything. Before that, you have no business talking about somebody else's pain. So the first step is empathy. I think I mentioned the story in the past. This couple were in big trouble. They came for counseling. The man, the husband, was so upset with his wife, he couldn't tolerate, he couldn't forgive her for what she did. What did she do? See, he made an investment. They weren't very wealthy people. He made a big investment, took a great risk. I think it was $30,000. And he lost it. And he came home shattered. And his wife said to him, "It's okay, it's just money." When she said that, he was so hurt. He hates her so much for saying that he can't look at her. And she's saying, I was just trying to be helpful. So what did she do wrong? She was not in the pain with him. She was not sharing his pain. She was saying, nah, it's just money. In other words, you have no idea what I'm feeling. How can you be so callous? So before you say the right thing, and she did say the right thing, but before you say the right thing, you got to share the pain. Otherwise, you really can't. You can't have an opinion about that pain if you're not sharing it. So imagine that she was also devastated. Imagine it was her money. See? If it was her money and she said, it's just money, her husband would be very impressed. Wow, what a mensch. But it's my money and you're not impressed? Thank you very much. It's my pain and you don't think it's serious? You're not even a friend. And if you do share the pain, you've already helped. You've already made it better. And then almost anything you say is great. That's generally speaking.
Rabbi, this is Baron. I wanted to highlight one aspect that I think goes in line with what the Rabbi was saying, and that is that Moshe Rabbeinu did bring it down. Yeah, he broke it after he saw what happened, but he brought it down. It's no longer in Shemaim. So that's already a very big matana, positive. I think we should be looking at that as well. Can the Rabbi elaborate?
I think you're onto something, because what did they do with the broken pieces of those tablets? They kept them.
Yeah, they used them. They saved them.
Yep, they put them in an ark. Some say it was the ark, that the broken pieces were in the ark. Yeah. So yes, there was something very special about them, even in their broken form.
Yeah, so there's always a silver lining. And in this case, it's everything silver. Thank God.
Yep. Medrash also says, as long as we're on that, Medrash also says that Moshe broke the tablets, which, took a lot of guts. This is God's tablets. How dare you break them? Give them back, but don't break them. So here's what the Medrash says. Moshe broke the tablets, believing that that would be a sin. And then he said to God, okay, now we have all sinned. So either forgive us all or don't forgive me either. Incredible devotion to his people. That's why he is still our teacher. Moshe Rabbeinu, he is still our teacher. He is still the grand model of what a Jewish leader and teacher should be. So, from this day on, we can certainly say, Shana Tova, we should be written and inscribed in the book of life. The book of life means not the avoidance of death. For that, you don't need a whole book. The book of life means the wisdom of life. We want to live wisely. We want to live with wisdom. And wisdom means making every day count. That's real life. So we should all be written and inscribed in the book of life, that the coming year should be lived fully, lived wisely, thoughtfully, considerately, respectful of the time, respectful of the job, respectful of the relationship. That's why it's so important that we partner on these teachings, these books, these lessons. We're all going to have a long life, but where's the wisdom to go with it? So thank you for your support, and thank you for your interest, and thank you for your encouragement. And God should reward you. Although you're not doing it for the reward, God should reward you with a meaningful, satisfying, and pleasurable new year.
Amen.
Jazakum Baruch.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Friedman. I'm gonna go, again, we just want to mention that we're coming out with a on the high holidays, and we are going to offer anybody that wants to do a sponsorship in honor of a loved one that has passed can please go onto our website 180 and please send us their name and their father's name, and we will go ahead and make a remembrance for their soul, so that they will be remembered for good things, and hopefully this booklet will inspire many, many people, and that will be in their merit. So we will send out the link, God willing, with the recording of this, of today's class. Thank you again, everybody.
Good
Thank you,
night.
Friedman.
Good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you. Good night.
Buenas noches.
Good night.
Yeah, that's it.
Buenas
Thank
noches.
you.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hashem. Rivka's iPhone.